1. I live in a very rural, mountainous area of California, and at this time was working as a cook in a bar. I was 24 and not in the best place financially at the time, so I had been borrowing my uncle's car to drive to and from work. I worked from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. I know everyone in this area well, and don't have a single enemy. I get along with everyone. One night I had gotten done closing up the kitchen, and decided to have a beer before going home. The bartender was talking to a fellow community member, and trying to get him to go home. He was too drunk for his own good. There were some out-of-towners that weren't too fond of the locals' demeanor, and it seemed like it was getting intense between them. I just saw it as a local that I knew as being annoyingly drunk, but perfectly harmless. I had my beer and went out and got in the car. I could see inside the bar and spotted the drunk local, completely smashed. I felt bad for not offering a ride home, but was tired from work and told myself he'll be okay. I drive away. Mind you, there's no street lamps, no buildings, it's the middle of nowhere, pitch black, quiet. I realize about a mile from the bar that I should turn around and offer the local a ride home. He didn't live far, and it wouldn't be far out of my way to do so. I turn around at a muddy turn and go back. I get in the bar, and I basically was short with the local and told him that I would pick him up in the morning and he could get his truck sober. That I'll give him a ride home tonight. I was 24 at the time, and a small-built female. He was a smaller-built, 35-ish looking male. I knew this guy had hit on me in the past, but I assumed he was just a 35-year-old weirdo who was lonely. I always shrugged off his advances. Anyway, with a couple of minutes of reasoning, he finally hopped in the car and I took off, driving towards his home, about 5 miles away on winding mountain roads. I didn't notice anything really at first. He seemed drunk, quiet, mumbly. But not too long into the drive, he starts saying thank you, how nice I am to help him out. I say the usual, of course, no problem. Couldn't let him be there knowing full well he wasn't able to drive. This is where I start getting creeped out. I make a turn on the road he lives on. It's a long road, not many houses. All of the driveways are long, about a mile or two, so you don't see any houses. He gets really quiet, and it's dark in the car. I can't see him really well. I notice him look at me though. I could see the reflection of his eyes from the dim lights on the radio. This is something I remember vividly. His eyes gleaming, kind of green from the lights on the radio knobs. He was just looking at me. I, without returning his gaze, said, "What's up? Why are you looking at me like that?" He says to me, "You're so pretty. I never get this chance to be alone with you." I shrugged it off, trying to play it cool, although I started regretting my decision. All of a sudden, he reaches over to me while I'm driving, and tries to put his hand, I'm assuming, on my breast. But instead, his hands land on my shoulder-neck area. I start yelling at him, telling him to stop. I slam on my brakes. In the middle of the road, no one is behind me, there's no one for miles, and I scream at him to get out of this car now. And I repeat it over and over. At this point, I had my hands off the wheel and I was trying to push him out of the car. I had leaned over and opened the car door. I had never in my life realized my own strength, my own weak strength. This 30-something male was not budging against me. I notice him laughing a really sloppy laugh. He says, "You and I both know that no one's around." I said to him, "We just left the bar. At least 5 people know where I am going. Please stop. Here's a flashlight. Walk on home. I'm done with you tonight." He is quiet for a minute before saying, "I don't feel like walking much." The way he said it scared the living shit out of me. I start screaming. Not a hoarse scream, but like an ear-piercing scream. I knew the scream was strong and loud, and I had hurt even my own ears. Just hoping someone had their windows open somewhere off in the woods. But nothing happened. We struggled for what felt like minutes as he kept trying to come at me. This entire time, he was kind of laughing. He was drunk, so that was probably my only advantage. I was not. He was sloppy and trying to attack me for whatever reason. I pushed on him like I had never pushed on anything in my life. I pushed so hard that I felt my arms just burning with pain. When he finally gets out of the car, I slam on the gas, not even bothering with the door. Remember, I was headed down a long-ass road in the middle of nowhere, and not on my road. It's a dead-end road after about 20 miles, so I keep driving down this road I know well, knowing full well I will need to stop to turn around. But this road is like 1.5 lanes wide, and there's hardly any turnouts. When I finally do, I turn around fast and in someone's dirt driveway, afraid of the car being still for even a second. I take off driving, knowing he'll be up ahead any second. I never see him. I never see him again. He was a local I'd known for years and saw frequently. I don't know if he took off to another area from embarrassment or what, but I never saw him again. I arrived home, shaking, red, scratched, out of breath. My boyfriend and our friend were at home playing Jenga, and I told them immediately. And they knew who it was too, and they went to try and find him. Never saw him again. That was last November. Let's hope I never meet up with him again. 2. So a few years ago I used to work at the Waffle House in a college town, so weird people really aren't that unusual. To start off, there are only 2 24/7 restaurants there, and I worked third shift at the Waffle House. Sometimes when a person's car would break down, the police would drop them off at one of these 2 places. They weren't supposed to, so they'd drop them off within walking distance, but not actually outside, like some shitty loophole. So one night, I was working with a cook and another waitress. We'll call them Mark and Cassie. Around 11 p.m., this old guy wanders into the lobby with a little bag. First off, we don't usually get older people after around 8 or so at the latest. Second off, dude's creepy as fuck. He starts off telling us about how his car broke down on the highway, and the police dropped him off in the parking lot next door. I feel bad for him, because it's the middle of the night, he's not from around here and he has no money. So I pour him coffee and I don't charge him. My co-workers are usually on drugs, so I assume free coffee isn't going to get me fired. This is when the guy just starts talking my ear off, like I can barely get a word in edgewise, which is difficult, since I'm usually the talker. He talks about what happened to him, and then starts trying to sell the tools he has in his little bag. Of course we say no, but he just keeps asking about it. He also starts wandering in and out of the store. The first time he does so, Mark, who's ex-military, searches his bag to make sure he doesn't have any weapons because he's starting to raise some eyebrows. There's nothing but tools though, so we feel marginally safer. When he comes back in, I keep talking to him. Mark and Cassie nope the fuck away to the other side of the store and watch. Keep in mind, this guy is literally the only person here. We don't start getting people until 1:30 when everyone leaves the bars. Now he's starting to talk about a lot of weird things. I tell him I'm interested in studying prisons, and he tells me the best way to do that is to get arrested. He then starts talking about how he used to be in prison but never says why. He's starting to make us really nervous, so I start to draw him. in case the dude decides to murder us, we'll have something, because I'm good at drawing things I can see. There's a low little wall where we can usually write out customer receipts, so I can draw him without him noticing. Not that it matters, since he's looking straight ahead while he talks to me. We start getting customers because it's about 1 AM. Bars let out at 1, so anyone who can drive gets there at 1, while those who walk get there 30 minutes later. And this guy keeps talking no matter where I am. He doesn't raise his voice or anything. He just keeps talking at the same level, even when I walk away to take care of other customers. At this point, I'm starting to think this guy is schizophrenic. I'm a psych major, so I mean actual schizophrenia, not just crazy. And wanting to get away. But I really can't because I'm afraid he might do something. He does, but not what I was afraid of. He starts just insulting customers. He tells one kid that he's fat, and why is he so fat? He needs to lose weight. Then he talks to a family of travelers and says, "Your wife and kids are fine, but why are you so ugly?" We decide he has to go. Mark tells him he has to leave as we've warned him several times to leave the other customers alone. So Mark tells him to leave or we'll call the cops. The guy starts yelling at us and glares at me a lot and asks why he should leave, but he finally does so. But he comes back half an hour later and we have to kick him out again for harassing customers again. He doesn't come back that night, so we decide he must have found a way home or contacted someone. So I finish around 7 AM and walk home. I live above the bars downtown, so it's a 30-minute walk. But along the way, I see the old guy. I dart behind a building and take the long way home. I don't think much of it because, hey, it's a small town, and there's not a lot of places to go. I have to work again the next day, so I go home, sleep, and get all my chores done. I'm pretending to be an adult as usual. So then, about an hour before work, Waffle House calls me and my co-worker Kevin tells me the old guy has been coming around several times during the day, every couple of hours looking for me. I'm a 23-year-old female, so they're worried about what he wants. I call my friend Jason and tell him why I need a ride and he brings me in. I ask what's been going on, and apparently this guy has been in at least 10 times asking to talk to me. He never says why, he just says he wants to talk to me. So I'm on edge, waiting because I have no idea what this guy wants. Is this 60-year-old guy pissed off I didn't defend him when he was kicked out? Is he asking for me just because I told him my name? Or is there something else? Surprisingly, for the first few hours of my shift, we don't see him, but he eventually comes in and ignores me. I'm super confused, but I keep an eye on him again. I've also brought pepper spray. Before long, though, we kick him out again for harassing customers. It's very confusing for me. He asks for me all day and then ignores me when he does come in. But after we kick him out, he doesn't come back. When my shift ends, my friend asks if I need a ride and I tell him no. The guy has left and hasn't come back, so I'm good. Well, that's what I thought until I saw him walking towards me after work. He yells out for me and starts coming at me, but I run into another building I know has another exit. I sneak out another way before this guy can find me, and thanking every god I can think of, I know the town way better than him. I still have no idea what he wants, but I'm not taking any chances. I sneak home in some back ways and get home. I call work and let them know what happened, and ask for the next few days off. They agree, and later they tell me the old guy kept coming in the next few days, and they finally called the police and they took him away. I still have no idea what his plans were, but Creepy old guy? Let's not meet again. 3. In May, I finally graduated from university. My school is in a very safe, very upper middle class community. Most instances of crime were committed by students and were typical of most college campuses: sexual assault and burglary. Reported incidences of crime were typically on campus or in the downtown area and frat row. My school also has a few highly publicized sexual assault scandals, so I was always wary of dangerous situations and avoided being most places alone at night. I lived off campus in the area that backed up to a part of town that was mostly families and the elderly. I never really felt unsafe until my senior year, when I had 2 run-ins with peeping toms. The first incident happened at the beginning of my final spring semester. I was often at my friend's apartment on the opposite end of town, usually just to hang out and do some homework. Their apartment was a part of a complex that was solely for students, and more or less run by the university. 4 of my friends lived in this suite-style apartment on the ground floor. But on this night, which was a Sunday, only 2 of them were home, and another was driving back to the area that night from her parents' house. All of us actually come from the same geographic area, and since graduation, we all still live near each other, which is great. I was hanging out with my one friend who lived in the apartment. We'll call her Pat. And another friend that lived in the same building. We were waiting on our other friend, Brianna, who was driving back that night. I really wanted to wait for Brianna, but she is pretty notorious for being late. So after hanging out for a few hours, I was ready to go back to my apartment. As I was pretty tired already, and wanted to Skype with my boyfriend before bed, I said my goodbyes to my friends and left probably around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. I walked out into the parking lot and towards guest parking. Guest parking is situated up a tiny little incline at the other end of the building. As I mounted the small hill, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and I stopped very briefly, turning to look to my left. I saw a man hurriedly stand up and move away from a first-floor window with its lights on. I remember he was distinctly middle-aged, heavier-set and balding, wearing a red t-shirt and jeans. My presence seemed to spook him, as he began to move around the back of the building out of my sight. He was also not very far from me, and I was spooked as well, so I quickly moved up the hill and got into my car. It was highly unusual to see a man of his age in the apartment complex, and my internal alarms were going off. When my doors were locked, I texted my friend Pat to tell her to make sure all of their windows were locked and that they secured their back door, which didn't have a working lock. The apartment complex was slow to address tenant complaints. I told her I saw a man creeping around the first-floor windows, and I knew our friend Brianna often left her window unlocked so she could open it when she smoked. After alerting her, I drove back to my apartment, which took about 5 minutes. I was a little shaken and I basically sprinted from my car to my apartment's back door. When I got inside, I Skype called my boyfriend and checked my texts. Pat and the other roommate that was home had locked all the windows and turned off the lights in the main living area. Pat told me I should report the incident to the police, and I was a little torn about doing so. My boyfriend agreed that I should report it, and I called the police department directly instead of 911. The officer that answered took my description and my personal info and thanked me for the call. He told me they would be sending some squad cars out to investigate. I didn't have any further contact with the police after that, but my friend Brianna said she arrived back at her apartment as the police were pulling up, lights flashing. Apparently they couldn't find the guy, but the apartment complex did issue a warning and a description of the creeper. I'm glad I did call the police, even if they didn't find the man. My next encounter with a peeping Tom happened closer towards the end of that same semester. This is the one that scared me the most. For the first time in my life, I had my fight or flight instincts kick into overdrive. I was coming back from my same friend's apartment one night. It was late, and it was fairly dark and windy. My apartment complex had only a few lights in the parking lot, and only a light at each front door on the buildings. More often than not, I would enter my apartment from the back door, which was a huge glass sliding pane. The backs of the apartment buildings were not lit, and each ground floor patio and bedroom window had hedges next to them, which made hiding pretty easy. On this particular night, I should have entered through the front door, but the back door was closer and I wanted to get inside and out of the wind. I walked across the parking lot and to the back of my building, head down against the wind. I looked up as I got closer to my apartment, and my heart leapt into my throat. There was someone standing behind my neighbor's bushes, directly in front of their bedroom window. The silhouette was distinctly male with short hair and broad shoulders. My fear was instantaneous. Whoever it was had seen me, and they ducked pretty quickly behind the bush, knowing they had nowhere to really run with me right in their path. I remember cursing myself because I had left my knife in my purse, and I had nothing in my backpack to defend myself with. I only had my keys in my hands. As I struggled with the lock in the darkness, and got inside quickly as I could, I locked the door and drew the curtains shut, backing away into the darkness. I was fucking terrified at this point. I thought I was alone in the apartment, and I thought this guy definitely knows where I live now. The only thing separating me from him was a glass pane. I rushed into my living room, livid that the apartment complex didn't put locks on our doors. I called my boyfriend almost in tears, telling him what happened as I looked for my knife. He stayed on the phone with me for a little bit as I calmed down. He was angry that there was nothing he could do for me being so far away. This time I was strongly considering calling 911, because this incident had happened only 20 or so feet from my own apartment. My body was pumping with adrenaline, which only made me feel more jumpy and scared. However, my boyfriend told me that the guy was probably gone at this point anyway, and that seeing me had scared him off. The fact that he had ducked to avoid me made it seem that he likely had no intentions of hurting me, and I had interrupted his creeping. I was still scared, but I thanked him and hung up. What if the guy was still in the complex, looking for more windows he could see into? I texted my roommates asking if they were home. Both of them were, and had been trying to fall asleep when I ran into the apartment like a madwoman. They both emerged from their rooms and I told them about what I saw, and my one roommate told me she was just as scared as I was. Apparently, girls had been reporting on Yik Yak that a man dressed all in black, face covered, had been harassing girls on and off campus, going so far as to chase some of them and threaten them. I was hoping the individual that I encountered was not that person. I didn't sleep a wink that night. My bed was directly underneath a large window that sat at ground level. I was always uneasy about it, but that night it was much worse. I felt safer knowing I wasn't alone, but for the rest of the semester, I was extra cautious at night. When I came home from work or from my friend's place, I always had a knife in a reachable pocket. In hindsight, I really regret not reporting the incident to the police or the apartment complex. I didn't even say anything to our neighbors. They usually had all their blinds and curtains open at night, and you could always see inside. For the two girls that lived there, that didn't seem so smart to me, but I didn't say anything to them because I didn't know them, and I figured they wouldn't believe me. However, about a week later, I started noticing that at night all of their blinds and curtains were drawn, and I began to wonder if maybe they had seen someone at their window one night. I no longer live in that town, but to anyone out there that gets a kick out of peeping into people's homes, let's not meet. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 138. So glad my bedroom is not on the ground floor after reading that last story. Although my bed is by the window, you would have to be one of the most determined perverts I've ever encountered to get into my room. And brave and desperate too, I suppose. Thank you so much to the 3 individuals who allowed me to use the stories in this video. Much appreciated. Although speaking of windows, I had to actually buy a heater for underneath my window today. Because, for some reason, many years ago, many years ago, when they came to install the central heating in this house, they actually put the radiator way at the far end of my room in this little hallway bit. It looks like there's a short hall or corridor, depending on what you want to call it. As you enter my room, then you get into my room proper, which makes it sound way faster than it actually is. So it'll heat the room, but it doesn't really do much for, by the window, which is fine in the summer, not so great in the winter with, condensation and all that, and my bed's right against the window, so that's not great. So I had to get a little heater today for that, to fix that problem, and hopefully it does the job. And with that, I think I'm going to head off for now, because I've got lots and lots of recording to do at the moment. Going to work on the Monday's video, and since I'm doing these kind of backwards, I'm actually going to record Friday's video, I'm going to record Saturday's video, which you should actually have heard by now, if you listen to Saturday's videos. Okay, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.